I'm honored to start this happening with regards from Jennifer Clement, the president of PEN International. When I think of the poets incarcerated in the world and punished, I think of poetry. Poetry is almost the only thing that has no monetary value. You cannot sell a poem. Nobody wants to buy a poem. Poems are not for sale in the market like apples and peaches, or in the auction houses by sculptures and paintings. I confess that it gives me a strange wonder to think that a poem is so powerful and so dangerous that the poet can be locked up and sentenced to death for rims and couplets, for metaphors and symbols. When contemplating how dangerous poems have become, I recall the words of British poet and novelist Thomas Hardy. If Galileo had said in verse that the world moved, the Inquisition might have let him alone. Galileo wrote, "To command their professors of astronomy to refute their own observations is to command them not to see what they do see, and not to understand what they do understand." And the great scientist also wrote, "Wine is sunlight, held together by water." In our times, if Galileo had inked these discoveries in 3 verses with stanza breaks, he might be looking at the sky, his round, telescope-shaped sky, from a prison cell. A poet can write, as Palestinian poet Ashraf Fayyad has written among other verses, "Earth is the hell prepared for refugees," and he be sentenced to death, now reduced to 8 years in prison and 800 lashes in Saudi Arabia. Mashhab Sabet, imprisoned in Iran 2008 and freed 10 years later last year, penned impassioned poems to Fariba, with whom she shared a cell at the beginning of her incarceration. Sabet wrote, "O my companion in the cage, how many cruelties we saw together, how many favors too and blessings in our isolations. They tied your wings to mine, feather to feather, and you rested your head beside mine every night." The poet Li Bifeng in China continues to compose poems in prison, where he has been since 1998, 20 years. One stanza begins, "Over the high wall we watch the sun from afar, and the mountains from afar. In the dreams of nights we see people from afar. Using the net of yearning we salvage those scattered memories, and then we let the bones grow into the bones." Today, in our PEN case list, we have 47 poets to defend. Poets who have been harassed, threatened with death, detained, imprisoned, tortured, and killed. Fayyad's first poem written in prison contains these words, "I am a part of the universe with which the universe is angry, a part of the earth of which the earth feels utterly ashamed. A wretched human towards from other humans cannot maintain neutrality." In answer to these verses, we are not neutral. Every day, members of PEN think of these poets and their suffering. We know for poets who are incarcerated, the sun is cold and there are months between months, days between days, and hours between hours. Even in the months, days, and hours which are not on the calendar, we are working for their freedom of expression and their freedom. Like today, here in Helsinki, Finland, Esplanade Park. But in some places it is. In honoring all PEN's poets who are in peril, I think of how, in my fidelity to empirical knowledge, poetry is my secular faith. Poetry is the search for truth and solace before the invisible. And every poet knows this. Although stars may have different names in all the world's languages, they cast the same light.